We are together today to chat about boundaries, status quo, finding joy in setting boundaries as an underestimated leader in craft beer. And this is a panel conversation where we have some amazing leaders here with us today. We're practicing together, and it's for busy professionals who want to move from nice to clear and kind in how you practice boundaries at work. Thank you so much to Andrew for putting this all together, and for the sponsors of the conference who keep this event 100% free and accessible, and that it lives forever, because this is a conversation, whether you're here live or whether you listen to it afterwards. It's a conversation we want to inspire ongoing conversations between people. So thanks so much for making that happen. Before we get going and meet everybody, a little bit about me. So my name is Dana Kaluzny. My pronouns are she, her, and I am a project facilitator and mentor. So I support leaders and teams who want to move from the chaos of initiating collaborative projects to action, and in ways that bring people together. And I have over 13 years of experience with emergent projects in different industries. But in craft beer, my start came as the director of retail and events at a Toronto craft brewery. And as an aside, working with over 250 weddings a year in a full production facility teaches you a lot about how to have hard conversations about boundaries with people who have multiple perspectives. And then now I'm the co-founder of Endswell Beer, which is a startup small batch brewery in Collingwood, Ontario. And I'm also one of the founding partners of the Safe Bars Pact initiative. So you can work with me through experiential workshops. I lead group facilities and one-on-one and team mentoring sessions. I just want to say a caveat before we get going, because we are going to have some really great conversations that may integrate mental health. I am not a mental health professional or a counselor, but I integrate resources and teachings in my approach that are informed by my own personal and professional experiences with mental health and trauma, so that I can make sure that people come together in ways that honor our whole selves. So let's get going. This is amazing because we are going to be in conversation and we are going to be role modeling what it's like to practice boundaries and to continue to show up for ourselves. It is an ongoing practice and a prerequisite of compassion, so we can build trusting and honest relationships. So it's more than the question of how do you balance your work and craft beer with your personal life? So we're getting into the nuances of that, and we hope that we provide you some really great takeaways from that, and again, inspire more conversation outside of this. So I want to welcome all of our panelists and anybody who's here live. I'm going to be monitoring the chat. So if you want to say where you're from and answer this sort of question that we start off with, if you have insights or challenges or cool takeaways, please put them in the chat. So let's meet everybody. I'm just going to go around and I'd love to hear just a little bit about introduce yourself and little question to get us going. What is a recent beer you enjoyed or a brewery that you visited where you went, whoa, these people are really disrupting the status quo? Who wants to start? Andrew, I'm picking.
Of course you pick me, Dana. Of course you pick me. So as I test my boundaries, I'm in need another stream on the other computer right now. It's been a really fun day of virtual conference, but you know, I'm Andrew Coplon. I'm with Crappy Professionals and Secret Hopper, and I appreciate everybody tuning into this virtual conference. Dana, I appreciate you more than you know with your involvement in the Safe Bars Pact initiative. You've been a vital force behind that, and I appreciate you moderating this panel. It makes it a lot easier for me, and such a great topic. A great beer that I've had recently, I'm going to give an interesting one, and I think this speaks to me trying to set boundaries. So I have a 2.5-year-old, and I drink a lot less beer than I used to. So I've dived deep into the non-alcoholic segment. I still drink a bit of beer, but I definitely enjoy the NA when I can't drink as much as I used to. And it's not a craft beer per se, but I had a non-alcoholic Guinness the other day. And drinking this non-alcoholic Guinness side by side with a real Guinness, I guess they're both real Guinnesses, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Was a really fun experiment, and it's been fun to see the growth of the NA segment the past couple of years and how the quality has improved so much. And for me, that helps me a lot with my mental health when I can enjoy a beverage like that, not sacrifice any of the flavor, and get to have a little fun still.
Amazing. I haven't tried that, but I love Guinness, so I'm going to look out for that. Thank you.
Quite tasty.
Does anyone else want to go next? Or you want me to pick on you?
I'll go next.
Jamaar.
Okay, me. All right. Yeah, I'm Jamaar Valentine with Bevana, which is a craft beverage platform. And I've been in the industry of food and beverage and hospitality for 15 years, which led to, of course, the craft beer community and finding ways to help the craft beer community connect really with community and the people within the company and outside of the company. So I actually recently tried a non-alcoholic craft seltzer from Bay Cannon in Tampa, Florida. And it's called Tranquilo. And the peach flavor, I thought, wow, this is really the future. But I also had the pleasure of visiting a tap room over the weekend that was not one of my tap rooms, called Okalawaha in Hendersonville, North Carolina, which is a small microbrewery that used to go by a different name with some ownership change, if I understand correctly.
Jamaar
is slightly frozen right now, everyone.
Okay. Well, we'll circle back to Jamaar. Hopefully this comes back. But Ren or Mariah?
I'll jump in. I'm Ren Navarro. I run Beer.Diversity. I am also in Canada land. Woo. I think I was a bit of a rebel with my beer choice the other day, and I had a Budvar, so Czech bar. And I was just like, the reason I picked it was because it's a true classic, and they're doing things the way they want to do, and they've always done it that way. And I think sometimes it's nice to kind of have that reset, to just go and be like, you know what, I love craft to the ends of the earth, but I'm going back to the thing that got me into craft, and having a Czech bar that was like super crisp and just like easy, no frills. That was it for me. It was a really great reset.
Yeah, that's amazing. Thanks. Okay, Jamaar, you're back.
Hey, it's me.
Do you want to pick up where you left off? We want to hear from you.
Yeah, I'm not sure where I left off, but I discovered Okalawaha. Yeah, in Hendersonville, North Carolina, and it's a town that may not visibly see as much diversity and may not see as much inclusion in the town, but the brewery itself, to see them bringing people together and creating a very inclusive space. I think we don't often have enough of that in the small towns, the small rural areas, particularly in the beer industry. So it's great to see.
Yeah. Amazing. Mariah?
Okay, I will finish this part up. My name is Mariah Calagione, co-founder of Dogfish Head Brewery in coastal Delaware, and now I'm the social impact leader for the Boston Beer Company. I am currently drinking a Mandarin and Mango Crush IPA, but probably the cool experience recently I've had is I went to a cask beer festival at Revelation Brewery in Rehoboth Beach, which is just 5-minute bike ride from our brew pub. So about 20 different Delaware breweries were there serving up some cask beer, and it was a lot of fun.
Awesome. If anybody else who's here live with us has any other great beers or great breweries that they've visited that they think are really, pushing the boundaries, see what I did there, with what they're doing, please add it into the chat so everybody can learn and benefit from your knowledge. So as I mentioned, today is about us having a conversation, and it's going to flow in different ways. And one of the reasons why I wanted this panel to be a conversation is because practicing boundaries is hard work, and it's so much easier when we do it together and when we share good takeaways and things that have worked, and we do so in a really honest way, because it honestly is being generous to other people as well as yourself. And so one of the things that I just wanted to start with in terms of just grounding us is just hearing from everybody on even that, like, the beginning moment of kind of when you shift to kind of know, oh, I need to set my boundaries, or I need to uphold my boundaries. Because sometimes with boundaries, that practice is a lot about knowing yourself and knowing where you're at in a moment. So I'd love to hear from everybody, and we'll just kind of flow from there. But how do you check in with your needs and feelings when you are setting boundaries, either with others or with yourself?
I guess I'll start that one. It's very difficult, actually, for me to set boundaries sometimes. I find myself in front of a computer so much over the past 5 years. You know, I've been growing a business, I've been building relationships. I always want to be tuned in. But I think right now it's an extremely relevant question to ask me. For example, over this past weekend, there was a pretty active thread in CBP that was really polarizing. And it's one of those threads that, like, do I need to step in? Do I need to say something? And I think that is a microcosm for a lot of situations that I deal with. And I find myself, when I'm dealing with, do I need to set boundaries? I ask myself a few questions. I ask myself, first off, is this urgent? Like, as in, do I need to handle it right now? Then I ask myself, is it necessary? Is it necessary that I respond to this person at that exact moment? But then I think the most important question for me is, will it make my life better or the life of others better? Should I jump in and do this work task, or am I better off spending time with my family? And, I try to give myself as many boundaries as I can, whether it's just putting my phone down and separating myself from work. But those are the questions that kind of help keep me grounded and make my decision moving forward.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that, like, even what you're saying, that process of pausing, like just taking a breath to sort of ask yourself those questions and have that self-reflection and self-awareness is so important, because often when we feel discomfort of any kind, it's like, oh, I'll do anything to not be in this anymore. So it's just fix it, right? And sometimes we can lose out on asking ourselves those are amazing questions in terms of, before you actually go in and do the thing.
And I think pausing is really important to me, because I can act quickly sometimes, but quickly is not always the best route.
Yeah, totally. Ren, Jamaar, Mariah.
I'll jump in. For me, and I always want to say, like, I'm not sponsored by, but I use Calendly, and right.
Same.
But the reason I love it so much is it says no for me. So because I'm also this, like, absolute people pleaser, and it's like, if you need something now, like, I should make time for you, and I have to say, talk to my virtual assistant, who says no, you can't do it, and everyone feels that the thing that they need now is the most important thing they need. And so the thing I'm really learning is, like, do I need it? Do I need it right now? Like, if I drop everything and do this, will this help me? And the answer is usually no. So I've really taken to, if it's something I don't want to deal with, 24 hours before I answer that email, because then that gives me time to kind of, like, sleep on it and, like, really think about it. I mean, and I'm also trying to break that habit. I used to be a sales rep, which meant that, like, 24-hour turnaround on an email was, like, the worst thing you could do. And so now I'm really like 24 hours at least. And if I can't get you something, I might just be honest and be like, listen, I'm super swamped with deadlines from other clients, because what I'm learning is that I have to remind people, like, they're not the only special planet in my universe. It's like, hey, I'm really thankful that you picked me to work with, but it doesn't mean that when you need me, I come running.
Yeah.
Because if I'm doing that, then that means I'm shorting someone else to give you something that really, do you need it now? You need it in 2 months. And I'm going to go above and beyond, and I'm going to give it to you in 3 weeks. I think we're good. So yeah, using electronic calendar stuff to kind of say, here's when I'm available, and I'm giving you this much time, and that's it.
And something that you said there was really amazing, which is you're setting expectations, whether you're saying it in terms of like, it's going to be 3 weeks, or whether your virtual assistant, Love Kaluzny, is saying it for you, you're setting expectations. So again, like that clear is kind, like there's no room for interpretation in terms of somebody playing out a story in their mind of how this is going to happen. Mariah and Jamaar, you're not on the Calendly team, but do you use systems, or do you use any scheduling systems that can help set boundaries for you?
I don't have a scheduling system that's beyond Outlook, which I obsessively try to plan and book. So I'm like turning off certain times or making sure that if I'm going to an appointment, I'm not only booking the appointment time, but also the travel to and from, so that I can be sort of focused on the job at hand. But I also, along those, while it's not a calendar support, I did a couple of years ago, I was all in on all of our Dogfish social media channels, and there's a couple of them. So I just turned off all my notifications, and I don't have any notifications anymore, which at this point, it doesn't seem that novel, but a couple of years ago when I did that, I was like, how am I going to manage if Instagram doesn't tell me someone asked a question and I don't answer it right away? So, I think sort of breaking that was kind of a nice thing. I tend to be a processor, so I'm not in a position to give you an answer right away generally. But on the other hand, I live and work with someone who is sort of passionate and very in the moment, here's the idea, let's go. Da, 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 da. I'm like, wait, so my natural inclination to process something sort of builds in that time, which I've come to appreciate more in the last couple of years than I realized what that meant and what I needed to do to sort of build that space for myself.
Yeah, I think that's so important. And just again, that piece of knowing yourself, I'm also a processor, but it took me until a couple of years ago to actually acknowledge that about myself. And it's helped because I always thought, and I don't know if anybody else is in this camp, but I always felt that to prove my credibility in a conversation, especially a conflict, I had to have all the answers right then and there. And it took to my 30s to be comfortable being I don't know. I'm going to need some time to get back to you on that. And even that felt radical in the best way. But yeah, no, I'm happy to hear that I don't know. And how do you do that, Mariah, in terms of, I'm skipping ahead, but I think it's fascinating because so many of us work in partnerships or in collaborations. And how do you balance knowing yourself that you're a processor and then also knowing that the other person is not, and mutual respect, but also that difference?
Yeah. Well, I always know when Sam's going to come up at me with a new idea, because he's like, so I know you're a processor. And I'm like, okay, what? You're still not going to get my reaction any faster, but thanks for setting that up. So I think both of us have learned how to work together. For a long time, our desks were right next to each other. But so I think knowing each other and how we react to things also helps us put the right filter on ourselves when we're looking at the other person and knowing how they, whether that's impetuous or processor, it helps us at both sort of figure out what the rules of the game are.
And I guess going back to that grounding question, how do you check in with your needs and your feelings? Is there anything that comes up for you when you need to set boundaries?
I think it's when I look at my calendar, as things have started opening up recently. For so long, there wasn't a lot of work travel, and just 3 weeks ago, I was like, okay, I really want to go to this conference in Atlanta in the spring, and I'm getting ready to register it, and I'm like, wait a minute. And so I took a 3-month look at my calendar, and I was like, no, that's not going to happen, because that just means I'm going to be like, bam, 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 bam. And I don't want that, because I know it'll drive me crazy and I'll be exhausted and I won't show up in the best way for all the other things. So taking that step back and looking, with a wider view, I think helps me to check in.
Yeah, I think that's so important. What about you, Jamaar?
Wow. Well, first of all, sticking to my Google calendars, which can be quite extensive, I still have to worry about imposter syndrome creeping in when I don't have a Calendly set up, because clearly that's where the real professionals keep all of their calendar details, right?
Jamaar only signed up for Calendly like 3 months ago, so like, no worries. You're
definitely not getting that sponsorship, Jamaar.
Love it. Yeah. But having a partner, a spouse, has actually been the most crucial impact for me being able to set boundaries. First of all, sharing a calendar where she is able to put in events ahead of time before I do, lets me know that I should not be trying to go to this event or that event instead. And at the same time, again, having that partner is so wonderful, because it's not just a partner to get through the good parts of life, but it's also an accountability partner. I know when she looks at me and says, I thought you said you were only going to, be on the line with them until 7:00. Didn't you say that you weren't going to work past midnight tonight? Those little reminders really help get things in check, and it keeps me a lot healthier, I would say. But to Mariah's point, the pop notifications or the push notifications, getting those turned off, when you have to monitor, when you loosely have to monitor so many different social media pages, it's a game changer. It doesn't matter that I have 4 different email addresses to monitor and 12 different Facebook accounts and all of that, because without the push, then I go in and it's under my control when I get all the input. So Mariah's right on.
Yeah, and I think that's so great, because it's also saying that those notifications or my email inbox is not going to essentially tell me the course of my day or like dictate how I spend my time. And I think the other piece that you brought up, Jamaar, which is so amazing, and I would love, like, so many people who have, families and people that depend on their partnership, their active presence in their home and in life, is to have a shared calendar. Like, I think that is so important. We have a family shared calendar just with Google, and it's great, because then if Mike and I, that's my husband, if Mike and I don't have the time to have the conversation in person, sometimes that will like almost put like a pin in a conversation that we need to have later. It's like a friendly reminder.
I love the calendar ideas too. So my wife has access to my calendar, and like this Friday, for example, she put in the 3-hour period where we're taking our son to the aquarium. Well, it's something I wanted to do. Just simply having it on my calendar and knowing I'm not going to work, I am now 100% doing it. So sometimes having that accountability partner is so vital. And to second and third, Mariah and Jamaar, cutting the notifications off has been absolutely amazing.
Yeah. And Jamaar, in terms of like, do you have is there a moment for you when you kind of like feel in your body like something's off? Like, if there is, you kind of maybe have a sense that there's an accountability piece. Like, is there a check-in part for you?
So sincerely, the check-in for me is getting that look from my spouse. That is the biggest check-in that I could possibly have. But I received a wonderful tip maybe a year ago, and someone said, one of the best boundaries you can give yourself whether you are a processor or not, is to simply allow yourself one day out of the week where you take no meetings. And, it's so easy for all of us to stack them up on top of each other. Andrew's moderating session on top of session on top of session for 3 days straight. And, we all have different tips to do it. But if I can have one day without taking any meetings, and I know Ren has some ideas about how to make that even better. But a day to work without meetings and input from others and simply processing helps me with that check-in. And if I see on my calendar that I have allowed those meetings to be there every day of the week, then something's wrong.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of that. I also don't do mornings, which is a long running joke because for years I was a competitive rower, which meant like mornings were my life, and so I think now I'm like, yeah, I'm good. 4:00 wake ups. I'm not doing those anymore. So a lot of my stuff you can't book me before 10, and what I've started doing too for like long term clients is that they have their own booking link, and so it's specifically tailored to the times that they'll need because I'm working internationally, so time zones are a thing. So I'm not going to penalize someone because I don't want to get up. It's going to be mid-afternoon for you, so I'll get up. And then I just block through my calendar because of the integration with my Gmail account. If I go and block it, it means that in Calendly it doesn't exist. And so I've really started taking time to just block huge chunks. When I started doing it, it hurt because I was just like, I always have to be available. I always have to help people. Like, you want me for half an hour, you can have me. And it was just, back to that same thing of like, well, what does this get me? It gets me really tired and it burns me out and I don't love what I'm doing. And so, I'm like looking at my calendar and I have 2 days of like massive things blocked off. And one is like, I blocked it off to go to lunch for a friend. So I blocked 6 hours. We're not getting together for 6 hours. But that's cool. I'm gonna just go and exist, right? So being able to do things like that allow me for like last minute things, for like family stuff, that I don't have to suddenly be like, ooh, let me move things. Day's already blocked. Let's go do something. Makes it a little easier.
Ren, can I ask you like how you made that shift, even just like mentally? You said like that sort of that at first there's that discomfort of like, oh shit, if I block it off, then, I might not be as available to people. Like that's some of that scarcity mindset. If I'm not there, people won't come to me anymore. How did you make that transition, that switch?
It took a little while because again, like sales rep brain, which is like, anyone watching this who's a sales rep will understand when I'm like lizard brain, like you just got to survive. And if you stop moving, you will die. So to transition from that to, I can't keep that going. And I mean, the first year and a half of this business, I was never home because I totally was like still in that mentality of like, I have to say yes to everything. I have to be everywhere. And I sat down and looked at my day timer because I'm old and I like paper, but I also like technology. So I would look at my old day timers and see, everything was color coded and it was just all work, like nothing but. And then that was the thing that hit me, that I was like, well, I didn't do anything fun. And when I'm home, I'm tired and like, I don't want to go anywhere. And I think some of it was the pandemic. Once we started really getting into it, I mean, the first 3 months were terrible for everyone, but there came a point where it was like, I need to really slow down because I'm not going to be worth anything to anyone if I'm just giving half answers or I'm not like finishing work. I mean, I'm signing my name to stuff, right? Like I'm not working for like a big company where I'm like, I'm one of X number of people. It's like, hello, like I'm it. And so, I don't get it perfect all the time. And the payoff is when it works well, I'm the one who gets the payoff, right? Like I get to be like, I chilled out today. I saw a friend, I read a book. I caught up on my admin stuff. Like it doesn't have to just be like I went out and felt the sun because that's weird and the sun burns. But I think that like just even catching up on emails and it not feeling like a chore of the notifications are there. I have to deal with it. Like no, I'm gonna deal with it on a day that's quieter. And I feel that I mean not all the time, but a lot of the time I want to give a lot more to the people I'm interacting with.
Yeah, and I think some of the hesitation is that the results of doing that won't be as great as the losses. And I don't know I would love to hear from other people who have like Ren, who have transitioned, what some of those results have been for you in terms of like moving to the joy side. And has your experience been that the results outweigh the losses?
I'm a lot like Ren. I want to work really hard. I want to talk to everyone I can. It's, I think, a problem I've had since high school. I would play a sport every season. And I remember my senior year, I decided, you know what? I'm not going to wrestle this year because I want to do something else. And saying no is really hard for me because I want to get to know everybody. I want to find that awesome thing about you that I can bring into my life and just build that relationship and friendship. So for me, it's been about, once again, kind of going to the calendar and putting that set time where I'm having someone say no for me, whether it's me putting a 2-hour lunch break in every day or realizing my happiness is more important. You know, you got to look at the priorities. And that's what I really had to do is, do I need to take this business to the next level tomorrow? Or is it more important that I just go for a walk with my kid or go to the park one day? And really kind of had me kind of go back and look at my goals. And every Monday morning, I literally have a reminder in my calendar that's 2022 goals, where I want to kind of go back to what I wrote first of the year and say, am I doing that? Am I actually living up to those expectations I thought? Because we have expectations for each other. But I think when you realize that, oh shit, it's my own expectations that probably should come first, then you start to feel a little bit happier. And it's been really hard to make that transition for me, not to say yes to everybody. But at the end of the day, I think it's been the best decision I've made in a long time.
Yeah, something that I think resonates with what Andrew and Ren have both said, and it's just a reminder that's sticking with me. And it might just be pretty elementary for anyone that's catching this session, but you can't fill others from an empty cup, right? And so in the end, I think that's going to be an underlying theme that we haven't talked about, but it's that simple. You have to do it. But anyway, Dana, you got this.
Sorry, Mariah, what were you going to say?
Well, I was going to say something that sounds a little counterintuitive, but so I think we all wear a lot of different hats. And so I feel like sometimes mixing up those hats more often. So like I do some work with a couple nonprofit boards outside of my day-to-day work. And so if I'm having a call for one of those organizations in the middle of a day, it just kind of breaks things up and gives you a different lens that you're looking through and a different hat that you're wearing. So I think sometimes, even though it seems counterintuitive because it's like more stuff, we're doing it. So I like kind of mixing it all up and taking you sort of out of a potential rut if that is what it could be considered in terms of like when you get so deep into your crazy meeting to meeting or email to email kind of existence. It's like, okay, let's take this call that really has nothing to do with anything else I've been doing today, and it just resets.
I think that is such a valuable point, Mariah, and I'm so glad you brought it up because variety in not just your day, but also your interests, it helps, just really helps like kind of overall make sure that you don't essentially like, and I see this a lot in craft beverage, your identity doesn't only exist in the role that you play in that industry and in that community. Your identity is bigger, is broader than that. And I think that gives a real sense of joy and also helps you practice boundaries, because if your entire day is just dedicated, and I've seen this a lot with like people who are just coming into the craft beer industry, is that they are so excited to be there for good reason, right? It is so much fun. But that excitement means that it's just like from work until the end of work and like who you have beers with all the way until you go to sleep. That's all that exists for you. So there's not a lot of even variety to change up your sense of identity, but also like the practice. Where's the practice of establishing boundaries? So then when shit comes up, and you have to have boundaries, you're lacking that practice. And I think that that's just a really important point, that actually it's not essentially getting busier. It's just broadening your ability to actually use the skills that you have. I see somebody in the chat said yes, exclamation mark. I don't know if it was to that point, but that's always great to see. Yeah, I mean, have any of you had that experience where you found that you've lost your identity or become so consumed in the excitement and of this industry and communities? And how have you shifted from that?
Yeah, I ran into someone recently who's like, "Oh my God, you're Beer.Diversity." I like did not know my name, so I was like, "Yeah, I guess I've just become a product." I think that it gets really easy to be part of the like roller coaster of fun. But remember, if you ride a roller coaster long enough, it will make you sick. And I think that kind of remembering that you got to get off and go for a walk every so often, and it's been hard because it's, people are like, what else do you do in your life? And I'm like, beer. And if it's not beer, it's whiskey. And if it's not whiskey, it's wine. And like, we see a theme, and then I'm like, oh, non-alcoholic beer is great too. But to find something outside of it and just be like, I'm not going to talk about that. I'm going to sit and watch some bad TV, and I'm going to remove myself fully from the situation. And that's like the little bits of things, go for a drive, go and just hang out, like catch up with someone. And we forget about those pieces as the way to like reset and reconnect. Because, and I think that we're blurring the lines these days anyway, because we're doing everything virtually. And it's so rare that we get to be in person with one another. And I think that I'm finding myself being a little bit more honest and kind of showing like what's happening behind the curtain, the big piece of like, it's the Grand Wizard of Oz, and it's like, no, it's just me in the back, like hanging out. And I think every so often just showing people and reminding them that like I am a true, just real flawed human trying to make the most of it. And when I do that, that's when people almost go, oh, right, yeah. And so it's not just about the reset for us, it's about showing people that like, yes, I'm doing a thing that we all really love. However, there is a cost to it, and I can't be entangled in it 100%.
Rin, I've got a question for you because, I mean, it's a struggle I deal with as well, but do you feel like being the face of an organization is challenging?
Yeah. And I think that, with what I'm doing, I fell into it. Like, it wasn't even like I woke up and was like, I'm gonna do this. I just like, so, my origin story is really that like, I did a thing I thought was going to be a side project. And like years later, here I am still doing it. So yeah, it does get really tricky. But every so often I just got to be like, I am a human who needs to go take a nap. And that's what I'm going to go do.
Yeah. And how many of you, because there's everybody in this conversation is actively role modeling to other people, right? Whether it's like the audiences of people on social media or our colleagues that we work with, collaborators out in the field, like how do you role model the fact that, at the end of the day, yeah, you're a talented, skilled person, but you're also a human with like needs and that your capacity changes and evolves with time. Like that change is constant. Are there ways that you role model that well, or ways that you don't, and you'd like to improve on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think transparency is really important. And there was a time where like if I was going on a vacation or taking some time off, I would like downplay it, like, oh, it wasn't great, or it was terrible, or like not terrible, but like I wouldn't really get excited about it and talk about it. Or like even now in our day-to-day world, like, why am I not on a call? Because, and tell people like, oh, you don't have to give them all the details, but I have a doctor's appointment or I have this, because I think it sets up the expectation that they can be also do that. Like I was on a call recently, like 12 people. And one guy was like, hey, I have to jump off because I have to go get my kid from the bus, but I'll be back in 20 minutes. Cause it was like a 2-hour call. And I loved that he said that, like, and that it wasn't like, oh, I'll be back. Like he was really clear about why. And so I think that transparency really lets people feel like they can also like live a real life outside of, a screen or a meeting or, their day-to-day. So I think that's important.
And I have so many Zoom conversations. I know many of you on the panel have a lot of in-person interactions, but for me, when I'm getting to know someone through the camera, I don't just want to know about their business or their brewery. I want to learn something more humanizing about them. And that's something I try to bring to the table of craft beer professionals. You're more than just a brewer. You're more than just an owner. You are an actual person with interest and a personality. And I do my best to try to get to know that person, because when they give me a little piece of them, I try to give a piece of myself back, whether it's saying, I got to take my kid to the park or, whatever it may be. I think it opens the door for us accepting that we are people. We're not just someone who has a job.
Yeah. And I think like something that when you said came up for me is like, there is so much vulnerability, right? For the people you're talking to and also for yourself, like the vulnerability for people to share. I mean, that's where I say like, it is about building a relationship over time, because that's not going to be established right away. I mean, have there been for any of you, have there been ways that you build that relationship, that you allow for that vulnerability in ways that have worked really, really well, either with your colleagues or collaborators?
I would say for myself, with the various organizations that I interact, in each one of them, there seems to simply be a slim common thread to the next organization, the next company. And while that may be small, just finding that way, like Andrew said, with that, sharing something that is more than just the business that you're doing, or more than just the cause of this organization or that organization. And, to Mariah's point about the honesty, simply being able to open up about it still allows others to see, okay, this is what's going on. And it has led to getting more buy-in and more partnership with those organizations for the face value, but also in the other areas of our lives. When people, if you ever wanted to sell Girl Scout cookies because you chose to invest in someone's life in these other areas, they will be more than happy to buy Girl Scout cookies from you. That's what works for me.
Yeah.
And Jamaar, I think it comes down to understanding someone's values too. When someone shares their values with you and you respect those values, it helps you understand that person better. Just like the consumer who, wants to support the local brewery that does good and they can relate to, versus just the one where they like the beer. I think it's really all comes down to relationships.
Yeah.
Amen to that.
And Girl Scout cookies.
Who doesn't want
Mariah, how have you seen, because you have had so many different experiences over the years with building teams, what have been some like really great ways of building teams where you're allowing everybody to kind of like, they're building a relationship with one another, but like even just that initiation, like I find sometimes that's the hard part about building a team, like how to initiate those conversations.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I feel like for so long, like starting off, you wear all the hats, and then, we bring, over the years, we were able to bring people in that were super much smarter than ourselves, specifically when you think of like technical skills. And I don't mean just like brewing side, because that wasn't the part of the business I was in, but there was times where I was doing like payroll and HR and stuff that I had no business doing, and I had no idea what I was doing. But then we were able to bring people in to join our team that knew how to do that. So I think surrounding yourself with people who are smarter and more skilled is always, it's not even humbling. It's more like an awesome relief, like you welcome them in. And I think when you're welcoming people into the team, I don't know, that I think that not only is good for them because they're like bringing, much needed relief and skills to the table. I think the hardest team experience I've had but it's also been, over the last 2 years when I was asked to lead the social impact team at Boston Beer, it was during COVID. So, and half of my team was in Boston and 2 of us were in Delaware. So we actually never met in person for almost a year. So that was kind of a crazy experience, but I think we just figured out like how to make those connections, and making sure that we start off the conversations like, hey, like, how was your weekend? What did you do? And like getting to know people outside of like, okay, here's the agenda for the meeting. I think it's important to leave a little bit of space, either at the beginning or the end, or maybe both, so that you can connect with people in real life. And there's a nonprofit board that I'm on, and every time we start our meeting, we actually start the Zoom 10 minutes early just so people can come on and connect with each other. They don't have to, like some people come in at the very moment or 5 minutes late always, but still those people who want to make those connections, I think creating space for those connections, I think is really important. I can't remember if I answered your question at this point.
Yeah, totally. No, I'm so glad that you said that about in terms of like that creating space, because I think sometimes we think like, oh, you know what? Everyone by the nature of being together is going to get to know one another. So we don't need to be intentional about that, right? But actually it's the opposite. It's you need to be very intentional about how you're building a relationship, because in my experience, when you take that time, when you create that space through either like check-ins at the beginning or whatever it is, that time means that when you go to actually do the work and the tasks, it flows. And I think people think like, oh, you know, if we spend all the time talking about the agenda items and the things we need to do, then we'll get that work done faster. But it's my experience, especially with teams, it is the complete opposite. It means that you end up doing a lot of work that might not align with people's capacities, their contributions, what they value. And then you end up wondering why the work is not working and going back and then coming up with a new plan and new work. And it's like people will tell you what they want and what they need when you create the space to do that consistently over time. Yeah, I think that is so important. And I mean, that goes back to Andrew, how we started with you saying that pause, that slowing down, that not moving right into action, right? I think that that's so important. And I know that that sounds counterproductive to working in an industry that moves really quickly. So again, I'd love to hear from everybody in terms of what have been some like tangible outcomes or results of slowing down.
So for me, I keep a little notepad next to my desk, and I like having that physical pad too, like Ren. And I write down tasks that sometimes I just don't want to do anymore or probably aren't the best use of my time. And what I try to do is find a way that I could have someone better than me do these tasks. And the fact that I've been able to delegate some tasks over the past couple of years, and a lot of it comes down to putting the protocols in place to properly train people to do their job for these tasks, that's given me that time to pause. So kind of making a list of things that would make my life easier, but also having someone else involved in the process. You know, for me, it helps create a little bit of a team mentality that just facilitates those conversations where I can connect with someone else in the processes that we're doing. That way I'm not alone, but also gives me that time to somewhat just pause and worry about me and the ways that I can help others in different ways versus, you know, just doing these tasks that I don't necessarily want to focus on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, Jamaar, go for it. Louis no. Thank you. I mean, I work in DEI with alcohol industries, so everyone is like, I needed to fix this yesterday, right? Like, I need more Black people hanging out of my space, and it's like, oh, okay, I'll just bust them in. Like, you know, I mean, it's just getting people to realize that this is something you can't move at breakneck speeds with, and having people understand and question, like, why do I want this? Why do I want these people? And understanding that it's not just about rushing people into your space. It's like, what are you going to give them? What are they going to bring to you? What will the relationship be that grows? And having people, you know, yeah, beer moves fast. I mean, like, you know, we were talking before this, the April Fool's joke, that Mariah, we were talking about, like, a beer style came out and everyone was like, oh my God, no, what? Like, that's how fast we move, because we're expecting these things to happen in like a blink of an eye. And we're applying that to people. And so part of my job is to say, hang on a second, you got to understand why. And you have to put things in place that make people want to come into your space. So the big thing I'm seeing these days are value statements, codes of conduct, where, like, when I was in beer 10 years ago, like, neither one of those existed, right? It was like, be nice. If you're going to get drunk, don't barf on anyone. Like, it was just these weird things where you're like, that's not real job lines. And so seeing people starting to say, okay, yeah, we can't rush this. And we have to start, like, making real strides and making sure we understand what we want. Has been really great to see over the last couple of years. I mean, we still have a really long way to go, but it's nice to see people saying, I will take a deep breath right here and try and figure it out a little bit more.
Yeah, great point. Thank you.
But spinning off of where Bren's coming from, the idea of taking that pause allows you also to assess the process that you've put into place and this action that you've been stepping into. Reassess. Does the action or the process actually accomplish the goal? Does it actually solve the problem, or have you just been doing this action because it's the way that you're supposed to do it, or the way that it has been done? Like meaningless measurements, or specials that don't accomplish the intended audience, or the marketing that doesn't get there. Without the skill set to pause and reassess, we lose so much of ourselves. I mean that as an organization, but also as individuals.
Yeah. No, great point.
And I would just add, I don't think it's always just, the drinker audience that we're looking at. Like, I think our own coworkers sometimes want an answer yesterday, and they want to know, what's our position on this, or what's your statement, or how are you going to fix this systemic issue? And it's like, we're like, this is a long game that we all, need to play and to repair and to, like, come at it from different angles, and we're all going to make mistakes. But, like, I think, we have to also help our own coworkers understand that answers aren't coming from some, like, box of all the right answers that we just pull it out and, like, oh, here it is, let's go, this plan is in place now. So I think it's almost just a cultural issue right now, where everybody wants their immediate right answer, the right response, the right plan. And we're all used to immediacy now, like, right? Like, it comes to our door whenever we want it, whatever it is. And so I think trying to figure out how to calibrate the expectation of immediacy with the need to do, what generally is a longer term good work or good approach, whether that's, as Ren, you were saying, your DE&I work, or whether that's a marketing plan, or whether, like, we always are stumbling over ourselves because we're like, okay, we've been talking about this new beer for 3 months now, so we're going to now talk about the next new beer. Well, we talked about it for 3 months because it hadn't even hit the market yet. So now that it's in the market, we're sick of it. So, like, we're tired of talking about it. So, like, we're always on to the next thing. So I think it's that whole, like, gotta have it now, gotta, like, have fresh, new all the time creates challenges.
And I know we're kind of wrapping up, but I have to add, because Mariah, you said something that's so important, is the repair piece. Because we're not always going to get it right the first time. I said boundaries of practice, right? We don't get to a point where one day we wake up in the morning and be like, I'm really in my boundaries. I know my boundaries. I'm never going to have to set them again. That's just not the case. And there's going to be times where maybe we don't express our boundaries, or we don't have any. And whether that's repair we have to do with ourselves or someone else, that's also an important practice. So I would just love, like, in the last little bit, if everybody or anybody who wants to chime in on repair and what they have done at moments where they've had to express that whatever they did was at odds or didn't work out the way they wanted to, or completely disregarded their own or somebody else's boundaries.
I guess I'll dive into this one. You know, I work alongside my wife, and that can get really challenging sometimes. And finding that perfect work-life balance with someone you're working with is even harder. So sometimes we might have a disagreement of sorts, and my plan of action to what I think is a good solution to whatever happened doesn't work out. So, as a husband, but also as a business person, I'm constantly thinking of what I can do better. And I want to talk to her about this. What we did the other night, we were in bed, and so often we just concentrate on putting out fires. We don't take time for ourselves. But we literally sat in bed and just kind of had like a debrief. We looked at some actions we had done recently, like, well, that didn't quite work out, Andrew, the way you expected it to. I'm like, well, what can I learn from you? What can you do better next time? And for me, asking those questions is really valuable. And I don't think asking questions of those we're working with or our partners should be looked upon as something you should be shameful of. But, asking questions out of curiosity is how I honestly improve, because I want to know how the other person in that relationship, whether personal or professional, is feeling. So by understanding those feelings, I know their expectations for future encounters, and I can just make them better for both of us the next time. And it's something I'm always trying to be better with. But that conversation for us is just kind of taking a step back and like, whoa, what happened? How can we do it better next time is really important. That way, I can repair what just happened, but also learn from it moving forward.
I love that.
Clarity is kindness, right?
Yeah.
And curiosity. I think curiosity is so important in whatever you're doing, and the willingness to just ask the willingness to ask a question, but also realizing that like you need to ask questions all the time, or else you're never going to learn anything new and never have a new approach.
Yeah.
I've got mentors and really good friends that I can just go to and be like, I think I did this super wrong. Can I bounce this off of you? It's, this is what I think I'm going to do. And it's great when your friend comes back and they're like, don't, no, don't touch it, and being able to have people that you can trust. I mean, I mentor other people, but I'm still getting, mentored. And you always have to remember that you're not always going to get it right. And have people that you trust. Don't just find someone who's doing the same thing as you and be like, hey, can I ask you a bunch of questions? Like, create a relationship with them, because if you're going to them with like serious stuff. You're not just asking like off the cuff. It's, and I think that that's really helped me over the years to have someone that I can go to and say, I messed this up. Or, hey, I said I was going to do this. Can you hold me accountable? I said I was going to take 2 days off. I failed. How do we work on this? Right. Like, and have someone that you can trust for that.
Yeah. And I'm so glad you said that, because it brings it back to Jamaar, what you said, that like the accountability partner. And if you don't already have an accountability partner or somebody that you can practice boundaries, hard conversations, and asking consent, like even like, I have something I need to work out. Can I do that with you? And practicing that repair, then I highly recommend or encourage you to look at the people in your life who you could build that relationship with, because this is hard work, and it is truly easier when we do it together. Yeah. So I guess on that note, thank you all for being here and for practicing together. And I hope that everybody who's with us live was able to get something from this, or at least sparked your curiosity to continue this conversation outside of this conference today. If you have any questions at all, you want to talk more about boundaries, then you can contact me. This is like my joy is these types of conversations. You can reach me at danakaluzny.com. Ren's also a mentor. Ren, how can people contact you?
You can do it at info@Beer.Diversity.com, or just go to Beer.Diversity.com.
Okay. And Andrew, you are such great at building connections and supporting people. How can people get in touch with you?
You can all find me on Facebook and CVP, or shoot me an email at andrew@craftbeerprofessionals.org, but please not tonight.
Yeah.
Please not tonight.
Or if they do contact you tonight, expect that they're not hearing from you until after
Thursday. Till Thursday.
Yeah. Mariah, if people want to follow some of the really cool things you're doing, how can people follow you?
I'm on Instagram. I think I'm Calagione on Instagram. And my email is just mariah@dogfish.com.
Awesome. Jamar, how can we keep up with everything that you're doing?
Oh, goodness. You can find me on LinkedIn pretty easily. You can also reach me at j.valentine, like the holiday, at bavana.com.
Amazing. Thank you, everybody, so much. Thank you for being here with us, and keep it going. Keep the conversation going. It's worth it.